Seeing how much love my last video about Vecna's true plan got, I decided to make another video focusing on what we're likely going to see in the upcoming volumes. I spent a lot of time researching, looking at behind-the-scenes photos and reading every interview related to the final season of Stranger Things. And trust me, I found some absolutely crazy insights that connect extraordinarily well with what we saw in the trailer. And you know how I've always said that all the characters would live happily ever after? Well, I have some bad news that I need to share with you, so make sure you stay until the end. This video covers everything we're expected to see in the next 2 volumes. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, please don't watch, because I'm confident that at least 80% of what I'm about to reveal will actually happen. We start this list with one of the biggest questions from Season 1. What is the Upside Down? We were promised that we would finally get answers in Volume 2, and alongside us, our heroes would discover the truth as well. But the big question is, how are they going to find out? We know that Dustin, Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan will head to the lab in Season 2 and witness that massive surge of energy, but that's not how they truly figure it out. The moment Dustin truly realizes what the Upside Down is comes from Dr. Martin Brenner. Don't worry, he won't reappear in Volume 2. It's possible we could see him in a flashback, but while Dustin and Steve are inside the laboratory, they essentially find themselves inside Dr. Brenner's office. A reporter from Time wrote an article titled, "Everything We Learned on Our Visit to the Stranger Things, Season 5 Set." She states, "For the first time on the show, we will get a look inside Dr. Brenner's office. The office is filled with notebooks. Each contains dozens of pages of handwritten notes, hand-drawn equations, and sketches of organisms from the Upside Down." Dustin learning the real truth behind the Upside Down makes perfect sense. Brenner is the most knowledgeable person on the subject, and as a researcher, he would have meticulously documented his experiments. The Upside Down is frozen on November 6th, and just as it perfectly replicated Nancy's bedroom and her journal, it should have replicated Brenner's office as well. Here's a bit more information for those who didn't see my previous video about Dimension X and the real truth behind Henry's powers. All of this information comes from the stage play The First Shadow, which has been officially confirmed as canon. Back in 1943, the US government attempted a secret experiment to make the USS Eldridge invisible. Instead, the ship was transported to another dimension, Dimension X. Everyone on board was killed by a Demogorgon except the captain, Captain Brenner, who was Martin Brenner's father. When the captain returned, his blood had been altered, leaving him severely ill. On his deathbed, he told his son everything that had happened in Dimension X. This means Martin Brenner knew about Demogorgons and Dimension X from a very young age. That knowledge may be the reason he became a researcher and dedicated his entire life to studying it. In the 1950s, the US government began the Nevada experiment, an attempt to replicate what happened to the USS Eldridge. The person in charge of this project was none other than Martin Brenner himself. During the experiment, a Russian spy infiltrated the research team, stole a crucial piece of equipment, and hid inside a cave in Nevada. At the time, the Creel family was living in Nevada, and Henry often explored the nearby caves using his Boy Scout spyglass. During one of these expeditions, he encountered the Russian spy, and the stolen equipment mysteriously activated, transporting both of them into Dimension X. After 12 hours, Henry returned to the real world with altered blood and a completely changed personality. This explains why Henry was afraid of chasing Max inside the cave. The cave represents that exact traumatic experience he endured as a child. This also confirms that the Mind Flayer controls Vecna, not the other way around. If Vecna had been in control, that accident would have been a lucky event that gave him the powers he needed to cleanse the world of humanity. He would have cherished that moment. But his terrified expression tells a different story, one where Henry is the victim, nothing more than a pawn being used by the Mind Flayer. Dr. Brenner eventually discovered the cave. Near the equipment and the Russian spy's dead body, he also found Henry's spyglass. That spyglass allowed Brenner to identify Henry. And it's the same spyglass Holly uses when she enters the woods. After these events, the Creel family moved to Hawkins, which explains why Max saw Henry's high school memories. This confused a lot of people, but Henry wasn't taken to the lab as a very young child. Believe it or not, he actually had a life before that, and we witnessed it through Max's journey. I know I've already talked about this before, but trust me, you need to understand this information before the upcoming volume, because I believe it's going to be extremely important. Because of his strange personality, Henry struggled to make friends in Hawkins. Still, he managed to befriend Patty Newby, Bob Newby's adopted sister. They began spending more time together and eventually fell in love. It's during this period that Joyce attempts to put on a school play, the same one Max saw advertised on the flyer. One day, while alone in the attic, Henry is overwhelmed by the influence of a shadowy presence, and his mind enters what he calls the battlefield. From there, he begins killing several animals, including Claudia Yunt's cat. Henry becomes haunted by visions of a humanoid monster, and he fears that he will eventually be forced to kill Patty. Patty later convinces Henry to use his powers to track down her biological mother. As he does this, and while inside the void, he loses control and once again encounters the monster. Patty is terrified, and when her father walks in and witnesses the scene, he is attacked and nearly killed by Henry, who is being controlled by the Mind Flayer. Patty encourages Henry to fight back, telling him she believes he is good and that she loves him. Henry tells her that he loves her too, and he manages to stop the attack, but not before Patty's father is blinded and severely injured. Mr. Newbie is taken to the hospital, and Henry's mother, Virginia, sends him to Dr. Martin Brenner. It is revealed that she had been supplied with drugs by Brenner, and under their influence, she told him everything about her son. When Mr. Newbie wakes up, he tells Patty that Henry saved him from the monster. He draws a picture of the shadowy entity and gives it to her. It is the Mind Flayer. Brenner then takes Henry to Hawkins National Laboratory, where they discuss the past. Brenner explains that his father was the captain and sole survivor of the USS Eldridge experiment, who returned with severe injuries and a unique blood type. He also mentions the Nevada experiment, and how a staff member fled with a stolen device into the caves. Using a sensory deprivation chamber, Henry shows Brenner a humanoid creature through the void. Brenner sees the creature on a monitor as Henry begins convulsing. Brenner then attempts to force Henry to kill a prisoner, but Henry breaks down and instead stabs 2 guards. After this, Brenner tells Henry that he can let him go. Henry returns home, but he senses that his family is unhappy that he's back. Using his powers, he reads his mother's thoughts and learns that she wants to send him back to Brenner. Giving in completely to the influence of the shadowy entity, Henry becomes possessed and kills Virginia and Alice before falling unconscious. Victor also loses consciousness. After these events, Brenner takes Henry back to the Hawkins lab, and Victor Creel is accused of the murders. This is the correct timeline for Henry, and I believe we will receive this exact explanation in Volume 2. Now here's why it's important to understand Patty and her relationship with Henry. When the Volume 2 trailer was released, we also got a behind-the-scenes photo showing Lucas and Erica at the radio station. Erica is holding an old newspaper with an article titled, "WSQK Welcomes Hawkins AV Club." In the photo, we can see a younger Professor Clark, and the young child featured is likely Bob Newbie. Back in Season 2, Bob proudly stated that he founded the AV Club, so it makes perfect sense for the article to feature him. I believe Erica is holding that article to hint at Bob's sister. Perhaps Patty was mentioned in the article, and maybe Joyce and Hopper could share more about this connection. I don't see any reason for Bob to be referenced again unless it directly relates to Patty. There are several popular theories suggesting that Patty will play a role in Season 5 because of her relationship with Henry, the version of him that existed before he became a full monster. The core of these theories is that Patty will help Henry remember who he truly was, a victim. Much like what we saw in the stage play where Henry was able to resist the Mind Flayer, fans speculate that Vecna may ultimately turn against the Mind Flayer with Patty's help and assist Eleven in destroying it once and for all. This theory is also closely tied to the symbolism of the D20 dice. Another reason it's important to understand this lore is that it proves Brenner knew all along about Dimension X and the Demogorgons. He also knew that the Upside Down was not the same place his father and Henry described when they were in Dimension X. Brenner understood that the Upside Down was something entirely different, and I believe he realized it was a bridge connecting Dimension X with the right side up. He spent his entire life studying this phenomenon, making him the most knowledgeable person on the subject. And this is likely how Dustin ultimately realizes the truth about the Upside Down. As much as I love Dustin and trust his intelligence, this mystery is still a bit above his pay grade to figure out on his own, just by observing a massive energy. But if he were to uncover secret documents or records from Brenner's experiments, Dustin is smart enough to piece everything together. This may also be how they learn about Vecna's plan. Perhaps Brenner attempted something similar with the children he experimented on, but the risk was too high and the project was abandoned. This could be how Henry got the idea to use children as vessels to power the wormhole, destroy the Upside Down, and unite Dimension X with the right side up. After Season 4, Matt Duffer said in an interview with Deadline, Brenner's going, how can I mold Henry, but not just into a weapon? That's really how he sold it to the government. But for him as a scientist, it's like, what other worlds can this kid show me about how our universe works? It's something we will get into in Season 5. What happened to that program once Henry became involved and how Brenner evolved it into including multiple kids? For me, this is just more proof that Brenner wanted to use Henry to gain access to Dimension X. And when he lost Henry, Brenner shifted all of his attention to 11. This is why he encouraged her to follow the strange noise she heard in the void back in Season 1. Brenner's ultimate goal was always access to Dimension X. I'm confident that Volume 2 will focus heavily on Vecna's backstory. Kate Treffry, the writer of the Stranger Things stage play, said in an interview, "You learn more in Season 5 about who Henry Creel is and where he came from. In Season 4, when you meet him, he's already connected to the Mind Flayer in some way. So Season 5, like the play, gets more into where and how that connection began. It gets into the nature versus nurture debate. What makes a bad kid bad, and how much hope is there for them? How much control does anyone have over that?" Kate Treffry worked closely with the Duffer Brothers while writing the play to ensure it would be 100% canon, so her words carry a lot of weight when it comes to what we'll see in Volume 2. Another important piece of information about Vecna comes from an interview with Jamie Campbell Bower, the actor who plays Henry. In an interview with Empire, he said this about his character: "Vecna was a human. Vecna was a child. Vecna was a boy who felt like he could never fit in anywhere. He was quite a lonely figure to me. This very sad boy who really only needed to be cared for. You'll see more in Season 5, so I'm hesitant to say too much. But from the pain he'd suffered, he wanted to create a better world, or what he envisaged as a better world." And let's not forget Noah Schnapp saying that Vecna is the most misunderstood character in Stranger Things. He was clearly ready to say more before Millie Bobby Brown stopped him. Noah was about to spoil everything on live television. So if we take all of this into account, it's clear that we still haven't fully figured out Henry's character. Moving on, we have some behind-the-scenes shots that I believe confirm Max will wake up this season. At the end of Volume 1, she's still in a coma, and based on the Volume 2 trailer, we know that Demodogs will attack the hospital. The first photo shows Sadie Sink as Max, with the caption reading, "Sadie Sink as Max gets her chance to shine." But the important detail isn't the caption, it's the microphone positioned above Sadie. In my opinion, there's no reason to mic her like this unless this is the scene where Max wakes up. I believe this moment will happen at the end of Episode 6, Escape from Camazotz. The second key piece of evidence comes from a TikTok featuring Sadie and Caleb, where they share their favorite scene involving Max and Lucas. In the video, they're outside the radio station. Max is wearing her hospital clothes, and Lucas is wearing his blue WSQK sweater. Even though Caleb tries to hide his outfit, we can still spot the blue fabric around his neck. Taking all of this into account, I truly believe Max will wake up during the hospital attack scene this season. While I don't know the exact details, I'm confident that after she wakes up, Max, alongside Lucas, Robin, and Vicky, will head to the radio station. There, Max will share everything she knows about the children's location and Henry's memories. And since we're already talking about the hospital attack, I believe the laundry room explosion we see in the trailer takes place at the hospital. I think this is Robin's doing, giving Lucas, Max, and Vicky a chance to escape. In the trailer, we see them cornered with multiple Demodogs closing in, so their only way out would be to use that explosion as a decoy. Netflix also released a TikTok just 2 days ago, showing the scene where Derek and the other kids first wake up in the other world. Henry welcomes them and takes them to the Creel house, where we see Holly waiting for them. This seems to confirm my theory from the previous video, the one where Holly returns home just before Henry and the kids arrive. Henry notices that Holly has injured her knee, but she tells him she fell while playing in the house. Henry believes her, but remains suspicious. He later realizes the truth when he notices his spyglass is missing, confirming that Holly went into the woods where she met Max. In my previous video, I suggested that Henry would lock Holly away and that Derek would rescue her. However the events unfold, one thing is clear. Holly will run from the Creel house, and with Max's help, she will attempt to escape from Henry within his memories. This is what all those scenes in the trailer are representing. We also get a scene of Max and Holly looking down into a hole, which closely resembles the Nevada caves. I believe this is one of Henry's memories. In the same Time interview, the reporter shared that he witnessed a scene where Holly wanders through a labyrinthine orange rock formation in a 50s-era blue A-line dress, reminiscent of Alice in Wonderland. blood smeared across her forehead. She turns a corner and looks in horror as Henry Creel staggers forward in pain. The reporter also mentioned that this scene was directed by the Duffer brothers themselves, which means it likely appears in either episode 7 or episode 8. If I had to guess, I'd say it happens in episode 7. Another thing I believe will happen in the next volume is that we'll see Barb again. Yes, Barb. In the same Time interview, the reporter said, "I'm exploring a tunnel on the set in Atlanta when I nearly trip over Barb's body." When asked about this, the Duffer brothers said this is one detail that keeps coming back, adding that Netflix kept harassing us about it. They also explained, "We neglected her, and as such, Hawkins neglected her. And it made her that much more famous. And now she is back, or at least her body is." Based on this alone, there's a strong chance that we'll see Barb's body on screen again. This idea is further reinforced by the fact that Shannon Purser appeared at the show's premiere. Moving forward, after rewatching the Volume 2 trailer, I came up with another theory, this time about why Robin is electrocuting the Demogorgon and seemingly trying to bring it back to life. We can clearly tell this is the same Demogorgon Will killed, based on its broken limbs. We also know that after everyone regroups at the radio station following the library attack, Joyce comes up with a plan to end everything by having Will reconnect to the hive mind and kill Vecna. But let's be honest, how could Joyce ever believe this plan would work? This is the same Joyce who didn't even let Will participate in the crawl, and now she's suddenly okay with him accessing the hive mind again to take on Vecna? That's a huge shift. Let's face it, the plan is bad. Everyone knows it. But after Joyce shares it, I believe either Mike or Robin comes up with a much better idea, one the entire group agrees on. They decide to resurrect the Demogorgon and have Will access the hive mind in order to control it and learn where Vecna took the children. Back in Volume 1, we learned that Demogorgons can pass through the massive wall, which is most likely where the children are being held. This is confirmed when Hopper and Eleven find Holly's shoe right near that wall. So the only way for our protagonist to discover what's on the other side is for Will to control a Demogorgon and send it through. I believe this is exactly what Episode 5, Shock Jock, will focus on. You really need to read that Time article because, in my opinion, it provides a ton of hints about what's coming next. During the set visit, the reporter is taken through several locations, and when he reaches the Upside Down lab, he describes the military studying creatures from the Upside Down. 4 flashing red lights greet us as we enter. Monsters from the parallel universe, one of which looks like an octopus, float inside glass cases. This line caught my attention immediately because I think it hints at the true final villain of Stranger Things. As I've always said, the final villain isn't Vecna, it's the Mind Flayer. And after analyzing everything, I believe the place where Vecna is holding the children is actually the Mind Flayer's true form, its real body. The dark particles may only be fragments of it, extensions sent out to do its bidding, while the main body remains hidden. The biggest clue comes from the vision Vecna showed Nancy. Everything he revealed came true, down to the smallest details. The 4 gates opening, Holly being kidnapped, Nancy's parents ending up in the hospital. Everything happened exactly as shown, except for one thing. We never saw the creature with a gaping mouth. If you're a longtime fan like me, you probably know the theory that the final villain will be the Thessal Hydra. There's a lot of evidence supporting it. The only reason I've been skeptical is that with only 4 episodes left, there isn't enough time to introduce a brand new villain and make it more terrifying than everything we've already seen. But what if the Duffer brothers don't introduce a new villain at all? What if the Thessal Hydra is a villain we already know? This is why I believe the Mind Flayer is the Thessal Hydra. Everything lines up. In D&D lore, the Thessal Hydra is often depicted as a monster with no head, instead having 8 Hydra-like heads surrounding a massive gaping mouth filled with teeth and acidic saliva. That description perfectly matches what Nancy saw in her vision, and what we saw in the trailer at the location where Vecna resides. The Mind Flayer has always been shown as spider-like, but that form was created by Henry after he arrived in Dimension X. But what if those spider legs aren't legs at all? What if they're hydras? A spider has 8 legs, and the Thessal Hydra has 8 Hydra-like heads. Maybe the floating particles of the Mind Flayer are actually those Hydras, while its true body remains hidden somewhere else. Let me know what you think about this theory, because honestly it ties everything together. Will's drawings, Nancy's vision, the strange environments we've seen, everything. The last thing I want to address is the Jimmy Fallon show moment that caused the entire fandom to panic about Steve's death. Trust me, the Duffer Brothers wouldn't tease something that important. If Steve were truly in danger in the upcoming volumes, they would stay completely silent about it, not spoil anything on live television. But Steve will be on the brink of death, and he'll survive it. That's what I believe the Duffers were hinting at. Steve will pull off a fake-out death in the same way Hopper did. I think this will be the climax of Volume 2. Steve sacrifices himself to save Dustin or Nancy, and the scene ends in a way that makes us believe he's dead. But then, in the final episode, Steve comes back and saves everyone, as he always does. This would mirror the scene from Season 1, when Steve finds Nancy and Jonathan at the Byers' house and initially decides to leave, only to come back after noticing the lights flickering. That choice ended up saving Nancy and Jonathan from the Demogorgon. So, for every Steve fan out there, you're safe. Your favorite character will survive in the end. As for the scene where Vecna is standing over Will on top of Henry, honestly, I don't have a clear answer yet. Maybe the bridge doesn't refer to the Upside Down at all. Maybe the bridge is Will. That might sound like a wild take, but it's definitely possible. Another thing that's guaranteed to happen in the final episode is an epilogue. In an interview with Variety, Matt Duffer said that the epilogue would take place in the summer, and that they had to shoot some of those scenes before even finishing the script. In fact, parts of Episode 8 were filmed midway through production, so we know the epilogue takes place in the summer. And honestly, it would be beautiful to end the show with everyone graduating. The diplomas wouldn't just represent finishing school, they'd symbolize surviving everything they went through. They graduated from hell, they graduated from life, and now they can finally be happy. The show started with Mike, Will, Dustin, and Lucas as kids, playing D&D in a basement. Ending the series with them as adults, ready to face life, would bring the story full circle. It would also be fitting that the show ends in summer, the favorite season of childhood. But now comes the bad news. After reading everything I could find, I think there's a real chance that Eleven dies in the end. When the cast gathered to read the script for the final episode, everyone cried. It was described as incredibly intense. Charlie Heaton said, "I was sitting in front of Noah and Finn. I assumed it might get emotional, but 20 minutes in, Noah is bawling his eyes out, like deep sobs. And then Finn was crying. That really set everyone off." David Harbour also said in an interview that Episode 8 is brilliant, that the Duffers really land the plane, and that it's the best episode they've ever done. Just look at how he talks about reading the script.
The end of this episode, when we were reading it, just us reading it, about halfway through, like, people started crying, and then about the last 20 minutes, it was just uncontrollably crying waves of different people. Noah Schnapp being my favorite, of just like literally,
I don't know about you, but the final episode seems to carry a lot of emotional weight. I can't recall the exact interview or video, but Millie Bobby Brown once said that after reading the script for Episode 8, she finally understood what it all meant. I can't quote her word for word, but the implication was clear. Eleven's fate is deeply tied to the ending, and many believe this points to her death. On top of that, in an interview with The National, the Duffer Brothers said that the goal is not to please everyone. Honestly, I still want to believe that no one dies and that everyone lives happily ever after. But after reading everything, following every interview, and being deeply involved in the community over the past month, I'm starting to give in to the idea that we may witness a major death. I'm genuinely curious why everyone cried so hard during that script read. It couldn't have been just nostalgia, and it couldn't have been tears of joy either. Everyone keeps saying the finale is epic, the best episode ever written and produced in television history, an ending that ties everything together. So I'll end this video with one final question. Do you think everyone survives in the end?